Hello, everybody. Welcome to CoinFund Q&A. Today we have David and Guarang from Indorse. Hi, guys. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. David, do you want to take us through a little bit about what you guys are working on?
Sure. Well, thank you, Jake, for having us on to start with. It's great to be part of the CoinFund community. So Indorse is a decentralized professional network. The main aim of it is to give ownership of data back to the users, as well as reward them for placing information about themselves onto the platform. So you can think of it as somewhat of a decentralized professional network, something akin to a LinkedIn or something like that, except that the main problem that we're trying to solve is the ownership of data by the users should remain the property of the users, and that you should be rewarded as the network grows.
So David, can you? It sounds like this is in the same vertical as something like LinkedIn, right? Can you talk a little bit about what's driving this idea that users are not being properly compensated for their data?
Yeah, so this actually came to us through another project that we were working on called Indorse, where we're deploying digital certificates for a polytechnic here in Singapore. So we've been working with them for a bit of time now, and one
I think
of the like that, so that employers and other people could then contact the student, they could validate the certificate right on the platform, and then they could potentially hire them. So as part of the pilot, when we were doing this, when we were setting it up to push to these different networks, it became really apparent to us that the user was getting the short end of this deal, that they were handing over all this data to these companies. They were basically, if you look at the TNCs, giving them full control over the data. And then when you have advertisements being served to you, you're not benefiting from any of that revenue. All that revenue stays within the platform itself. You're not benefiting when HR companies email you or solicit you on these platforms. So we really saw a way to give ownership of the data back to the users, as well as reward them for adding this information to their profile.
So just the devil's advocate on that for a second.
Mm-hmm.
Some people would argue that, well, you are compensating the users. You're giving them the service of, whatever that application is. In the case of LinkedIn, you're giving them a professional network, and in fact, possibility of getting a job from, by using it.
Mm-hmm.
So how would you respond to that? Like, what in that compensation isn't fair?
So we think it can be done much better. We think that as you're building the network, as the value of that network grows, you should get more out of it.
It looks like David's connection is a bit slow.
Yeah. I think so. Yeah, I think what David was saying is that you should get more out of this deal than the platform actually, because it's the users who are making the platform valuable. So according to Metcalfe's law, the value of any social network is directly proportional to the number of users on the network. And it's not only about the compensation. It's also about having true things on your profile. So right now you go on LinkedIn, some random people add me sometimes, and they start endorsing me. Like, they don't even know who I am. I don't know who that guy is, but he starts endorsing me. So essentially, these endorsements, they don't carry much value. As in, I don't know, just people keep randomly endorsing. Sometimes I go on LinkedIn and LinkedIn shows me all these things. Hey, do you want to endorse this guy? I'm like, yeah, okay, let me do that. So yeah, that's another problem that we are trying to solve. And I think this is a big problem in the industry, as in the background verification of employees, that takes a lot of time and cost. So big companies, Fortune 500 companies, they spend at least 2 to 3 weeks in verifying the background of the employees, new hires or new recruits, all these things. So that's also another problem we are trying to solve.
Mm-hmm. So as the CTO, can you talk a little bit about the technology that you guys are using to implement Indorse?
Yeah, sure. So we are basing the Indorse platform on the Ethereum blockchain. So Ethereum blockchain will have the tokens and the repetition of the user. Along with that, the data will be stored on IPFS, which is like a decentralized storage network, like a decentralized Dropbox. Hence, this gives a lot of transparency to the data, and users can turn their data on and off. So you can choose whether you want to advertise on your profile or not. You can choose whether you want your profile to be visible to other people. In case of other social networks, it is the platform who controls all of this. But with the advent of blockchain, we thought users should have more power, and that's why we are starting with this.
Mm-hmm. David, are you there? We lost you for.
Yep,
for
sorry about that. Yep.
So should we return to that question?
Oh, Garang was unable to answer, or okay.
We did cover it, but I feel like I don't want to kind of cut you off mid sentence.
Oh. No, Garang is perfectly capable of answering any question regarding this. Yeah, so we really feel like there's an opportunity here using blockchain technology, using Ethereum, using these different new technologies to give back to the user, give back control of their data, as well as reward them for taking actions on the platform and benefiting from the growth of the platform. We're moving into we often talk about this idea of P2P. And it's often not really the case, where the users are not really benefiting from the sharing of the underlying technology. So we think we can do it differently.
Nice. And so can you guys talk a little bit about how you came into blockchain in the first place, and sort of what your experience has been and what you've been working on for the last couple of years that led you to here?
Yeah, so I'll start then. I got involved with Bitcoin during the bubble of $100 back in 2015. So yeah, it had actually, I had heard about it originally back in 2011, and didn't think much of it. A friend of mine on a forum for some software, I was working on some software at the time, helping people set up membership websites. A friend of mine on a forum had posted about it. 2011, didn't think anything of it. 2013 rolls around, I hear about it again. And I start really looking at it. I start trading it. I start trying to arbitrage against the different exchanges, including Mt. Gox, which fortunately I didn't keep very much on soon after that. But I was playing around, and it occurred to me that it was quite difficult, at least for people in Singapore, to purchase Bitcoin, buy and sell Bitcoin. So after having set up all these accounts and really learning the ins and outs of it, I decided to set up a brokerage here in Singapore. The regulations were quite favorable for that here. So I was able to start helping people here buy and sell. I did that for a couple of years and eventually sold that brokerage in 2015 to another exchange. And that was when I met Garang at an Ethereum meetup around the same time.
Yeah,
and
so
maybe Garang can talk about us from there.
Yeah, so I have a similar story, as in, see, I'm the tech guy. So when Bitcoin came about in 2008, yeah, I heard first about Bitcoin in 2010, I think. I tried to mine Bitcoin at the time, but I had a really bad computer, Pentium 4, and I couldn't mine a single Bitcoin. But that's how my curiosity about Bitcoin and blockchain arose. But then Ethereum came about in 2014. So at that time, Vinay Gupta was here. Vinay Gupta was the evangelist for Ethereum with the foundation at that time. He came to Singapore. He gave a talk, and it opened up a lot of possibilities for me. So he was speaking about having Airbnb on the blockchain, having all these decentralized applications on the blockchain, and I thought, wow, this is the exact and greatest use case of blockchain. Then I started learning Ethereum, writing smart contracts. That was back in 2014. The one thing I noticed is that writing smart contracts itself was quite difficult, because it's not only about writing Solidity, but it's also about setting up the node, understanding the structure of the transactions, and doing all these things with it. So I have been doing startups for a long time, but with blockchain, I could unlock a lot of hidden potential within web applications, because this is the next wave of web applications. So then I met David at this event. We thought, okay, I said, David, you have just sold your company and you have nothing to do now, so let's start a new company. So that's how we started with Indorse. That was back in 2016. So we have been working on that for 1.5 years now. we were one of the first few blockchain companies in Singapore, along with Digix and Autonomous. I'm also the co-organizer of the Ethereum Singapore meetup. So me and Digix guys, we started the meetup. We were only like 5 or 6 people at the time. So I still remember the second meetup. We met in a pub, and we were like, we had a table for 6 people, and it didn't even fill up. So it was quite a small meetup at that time. And today we have more than 1,000 people in the meetup.
Yeah.
So it's been
Typical
going good.
events are over 100 people as well. Yeah.
Exactly. It's been going good. The community is increasing. So we have been working on Indorse. We got a pilot with university in Singapore. So they will be the first ones to issue their diplomas on the blockchain. And that's how we came into this entire thing. And from the same pilot came about the idea for Indorse. So with Indorse, we want to change a lot of things. And with Indorse, it was a very small niche product. With Indorse, we thought, okay, let's get bigger and let's have a bigger vision and let's disrupt a lot of things in the market.
So Garang, I don't think I realized, did we meet at the Vinay event with Gavin? Gavin, I think, was teaching Solidity coding the next night.
Oh yeah. I didn't attend that even though. Yeah.
Okay, I just realized that. Okay, cool.
Cool. So do you guys see Indorse as a, maybe basically a direct competitor to LinkedIn, or is there sort of an overlap, but other features that you're excited about as well?
I see a lot of the core features being very similar, but I also see it being a lot more modular than LinkedIn. We want to build a platform that allows you to build use cases such as LinkedIn. That's our first use case for the platform. But we want to see other things being built with the core protocol, with the endorsement scoring mechanism, with the endorse tokens. We want other things to be built on top of it, and we want people to be building interesting modules that can plug into it. If you look at like LinkedIn, it's become somewhat calcified. There really hasn't been huge advances to what you can do on it. I ask people all the time, have you gone to a company page? And most of them either say no, or like there's nothing interesting on it. So they really haven't evolved like we think they can if they build it more as a or if it's rebuilt more as a platform that other people can build interesting things on top of.
Is it that so that's a really interesting point about company pages, and there's kind of like two kinds of sites. I mean, there's probably more, but I'm just thinking of two types of sites about companies, right? You have the LinkedIn company page where you go and the company kind of gets to represent itself. And then you have like the Glassdoor type of site, the review site, where all the former employees of that company get to represent the company. So it's interesting that like what do you like? It feels like the Glassdoor version is the thing that's like really useful, and maybe the reason why. Like the LinkedIn company page is not that useful because there's not a lot of sort of like really prescient information that the company is willing to put on that page about itself of the type that's really important to prospective employees. Like what do you think about that?
Well, I mean, we try posting stuff to LinkedIn all the time as a company, and it's a bit clunky, to be honest.
Okay.
We try to use it for like a social media platform, and it's just not very useful for that. For example, like if you want to post an article, you have to post it through your personal account. You can't do it through your company account. So it hasn't really grown and evolved the way that we think it can. And also, we've had a lot of requests actually from companies to enable our voting mechanism, which we're using for the anonymous voting mechanism for the platform, to allow them to put out questions to potential customers or to customers about products and things like that, so that they can get feedback directly from their users.
And see, if you look at Glassdoor, again, it's like a peer-reviewed site, right? Like people come and post their experiences about the company, about the salary. So yeah, I think it's getting towards the peer-to-peer applications, and I think, as you said, Glassdoor is the next evolution of company pages or something like that, and that's valuable because people contribute to it. So
yeah, but I would have to say though that the first iteration of the platform is for individuals to be posting their information.
Yeah, And we are thinking about a company page in the next iteration as well. Yeah.
So when you say platform, it seems to suggest a kind of like general set of functionality upon which different apps are built, right? And you're kind of saying that the LinkedIn or the Indorse app, the professional networking app, that's going to be the first app. What is the operating system of this whole thing? Like, what does the platform encapsulate?
Yeah, so the basic technology behind this is the anonymous endorsement protocol. It's based on the Open Vote network by Patrick McCorry here in London. So I just met him yesterday. So yeah, the basic idea is that everything that you post on this platform will have to get endorsed by your peers. This can be applied in many other scenarios like coding or peer reviews of your research papers or your journals. Even in KYC or getting freelancing jobs, all these things. So that forms the gist of this platform on which, so essentially I'm looking at it as a horizontal and we can integrate into many verticals later on. So I think.
So in other words, there's a mechanism where kind of your peers are vetting all of the information that you're putting on.
Exactly.
And how do you know, like, is there like a KYC functionality to this platform? Because after all, if everything is anonymous, then I can just create a bunch of accounts and endorse myself.
So see, anonymous as in in the anonymous endorsement protocol, the anonymity is in the votes that you're giving, essentially. So suppose, Jake, you make a claim. You say that, hey, I can write JavaScript code. It will go out for endorsements to maybe 10 other people on the platform. And these guys, they will start voting on it, yes or no. And these votes will be anonymous. Your claim is not anonymous. So after the voting period, it will be revealed. But I don't want the last voter to be influenced by the earlier votes. And that's why we want to keep this mechanism anonymous. Because as a last voter, if I see that the vote is going towards yes, I might be inclined to vote yes. Otherwise, my vote will be wasted, something like that.
Well, so there's a distinction, right, between anonymous and blind, right? So anonymous is when eventually I know that, like, who voted for me. Like I said, I'm a JavaScript developer, and then I know that Grang voted that, and indeed I am. And it's a different thing that I don't know who's voting what at the time that voting is taking place, which means I'm blind to the voting. I can't see it. So which is it, anonymity or is it like voting blindness?
Yeah, I would say it's kind of like voting blindness, but the anonymity is only in the voting period. Later on, it will be revealed to you who voted for you. And again, one more thing is it's also randomized. So in the first iteration, you won't be able to choose your endorsers because we don't want people to game the system. Otherwise, you can just go and tell your mom or your dad and say, hey, can you endorse for me? And they would do it because they like you. But in this case, we want this to be really objective. So the claim that you put needs to be provable online or in any other format. So suppose I say that I can write smart contracts. I can put up my GitHub link as a proof that I can actually write smart contracts. So individual people can go and verify that fact, that truth, and then endorse me. So it's not like they know me and hence they're endorsing me. It's based on the validity of my claim.
Right. And so the people that are voting for or against my claim, presumably there are people who know me in real.
No, that's the thing. It need not be people that you know. So the algorithm will take a look at certain factors. So it will look at the most active users on the platform. It will also look at people who are similar to you. So if I say that I can code, the algorithm will try to choose people who have some coding skills in their profile as well. Otherwise, I can't go to a musician and say that, hey, I can write smart contracts. So that's we are taking some of these factors into consideration. Also, we'll have some machine learning algorithms and clustering techniques through which we'll choose the pool size or the endorsers for this.
So what happens when I'm compelled to vote for someone that I don't really know?
Yeah. So sorry, David, go ahead.
Go ahead. In that case, you can decline.
Yeah. So you have a choice whether to register or not. So when you get a request for endorsement, you have a period in which you can register for this, and you have to deposit your tokens, so your reputation tokens on this. You can choose not to endorse this guy or not to participate in this process. So it's up to you.
Understood. So is it fair to say then that kind of like the best voting though is going to come from people who have at least some professional experience with me here? And so, you know, there's a bunch of, there might be like some data points or votes that are noise, and then like the really good signal are from my former coworkers.
Yes, so we are considering multiple levels of endorsements and multiple levels in the algorithm. To begin with, we are releasing a POC. For that, we are choosing random endorsers. But yeah, we are working on that. So actually, we are thinking of 3 or 4 levels. Essentially, first is randomized. Second is people you know. And third might be influencers on the platform or people who have a really high score. So suppose I go to some actual developer from the Ethereum Foundation, and I ask him, hey, can you endorse me for this, writing smart contracts? So his endorsement might carry much more weight than a random person on the road, right? So
right, understood. So if I'm a voter, do I get rewarded for voting correctly or incorrectly?
So what happens is,
I suspect I know the answer to the question.
Yeah, exactly. You get voted for that, rewarded for that. So when you are putting your endorsement, you are staking your reputation again. So if you and then I have a mechanism similar to proof of stake in which we'll have a consensus of all these votes. If you go against the consensus, we can safely assume that you're acting in a malicious way. So suppose 80% people say yes and you say no, then you will be penalized for that. Now you won't get a reward and your reputation will decrease. So same thing with the claimant. If my claim doesn't get endorsed, I put a frivolous claim, then my reputation will decrease. And if it gets endorsed, I will get more reputation and more rewards.
So got it. So is there like a score also? Is there like a reputational score that everybody has?
Yeah, exactly.
So essentially, this is kind of a prediction market on somebody's
That's what
claim.
I'm telling David. David doesn't like that comparison.
I don't like saying that so much, but yeah, there's something there to that.
Well, when you start looking at a bunch of these like decentralized voting mechanisms, like take for example Steemit, right? So Steemit says, you know, if you upvote kind of early on in the life of a post, and then that post turns out later on to be really successful, a lot of people follow on and vote in the same way that you did, you know, then you will get a larger allocation of the reward because you were a better predictor of the outcome. And so in that sense, you know, that's almost like economically equivalent to just saying, I'm going to invest in this prediction market and the outcome of this post and the success of this post. But, you know, very early on, and therefore I'm going to pay like just a little bit of money, and then I'm going to make a large reward because I was eventually like very right. So this sounds like a similar kind of scenario here. So about you know, LinkedIn, I think by my last calculation was something around 500 million users.
I think around 200 million, yeah.
Well, yeah, so in the hundreds of, and I'm guessing that means just like registered accounts, and then probably the active users are less number than that. But so we always get to the idea of like when you're building on Ethereum, scalability is a huge issue, and when you are you know, heading toward this kind of use case to a market of this size, and really like anyone, even in smaller markets, are going to have some issues on Ethereum today. So we saw, for example, some major network congestion as a result of the status sale, which was able to include only about 20,000 people, albeit in a bit of a kind of inefficient algorithm, you know, as it relates to the smart contracts, but still. So how do you guys look at scalability of such a platform? It sounds like the success case of any app is really kind of, you know, in counterpoint to the state of scalability of the underlying Ethereum platform today.
Yeah, so this project is definitely a mainstream project, and one of the goals with it is to bring in a lot of people into the cryptocurrency community. because you don't need cryptocurrency to participate, and you're earning ultimately a token which can be exchanged for cryptocurrency on exchanges. So yeah, we definitely see this as having an effect as far as overall transaction volume. So we want to be mindful of that. And Garang, maybe you can talk about some of the scaling solutions that we've come up with for this.
Sure. So yeah, actually, in fact, yesterday I was having a discussion with Patrick. So see, this guy has a PhD in Bitcoin, and we are actually, our advisors are quite a good bunch of people. So we have Loy Lu, who is working on the smart pool and Kyber network. We have Ben Chan as well. So yeah, I keep having these discussions. So first of all, see, we are using zero knowledge proofs for this algorithm. With the Metropolis release, it is going to be a native feature in the blockchain itself. So that might actually help the algorithm evolve even more. And also, the actual voting, we are also considering using payment channels for that, or the Raiden network in the future. Not immediately, but in the next 1 or 2 years, I think. So and I think by that time the technology, blockchain, Ethereum would have evolved a lot more, and I think that would help us a lot.
Gotcha. And then, okay, so payment channels, and that's something that you would consider as a kind of third-party offering through Raiden. I know there's a couple of projects today that actually have implemented their own.
Exactly.
Funfair was one where they have a custom, I think it was called Fate Channels or something like that, solution there. So you don't see sort of an issue, you feel like you have a runway of about 1 to 2 years before scalability is really an issue on the platform. Is that because you anticipate a runway that long before you get to launch, or?
No, definitely not. We'll be launching a bit earlier, but again, getting users on the platform will take some time. And also the voting network or the voting algorithm, not all the people are voting at the same time. So it's a staggered process. It will be through some days. So once you get a request for endorsement, you might have 1 or 2 days to register for it. After that, you'll have 1 or 2 days to actually commit and vote on this claim. So it's a staggered process. I would make sure not to have all the people coming in at the same time and clogging up the network. So that's also one of the reasonings. Yeah.
So let's talk about user acquisition for a bit as well. So the social network space is, obviously highly competitive. I always I occasionally meet, in real life people who are working on startups, and I'm like, what kind of startup are you working on? And they're like, I'm working on the social network, and I'm like, you're crazy. And that's because, of course, everyone knows that incumbents in social networking. You mentioned Metcalfe's law, Garang, right? So again, Metcalfe's law says that the utility of a communications network grows in proportion, I think specifically as the square of the number of users in that network, right? Because if you think about a telephone network, you want to have a line between every two. Anyway, so the network effects of the incumbents are really strong. It's very, very painful to leave Facebook today. It's very painful to leave LinkedIn, if you're a professional, and so on and so forth. So how do you guys see this little project competing in that kind of arena and building an audience?
So to begin with, we're definitely targeting the community, the cryptocurrency blockchain community. And that's part of the reason for doing the token sale, as well as to bring these people into the platform. That's one of the great things about a token sale, is you can bring in people into the platform who have an incentive to see it succeed. So we think our initial core community is going to be from the cryptocurrency community. Going beyond that, we are looking at building some tools that will help you import some of these data feeds from these other platforms. For example, from LinkedIn, being able to easily import your profile is definitely critical to getting the platform going, or getting you with your profile going. We also have a mechanism that a lot of these platforms don't have, which is an intrinsic reward built into it. So we can incentivize people not only to join, to post their profile, to post their claims, but also to invite their friends over as well. And I think that just having that as an advantage is really good. Going beyond the initial, I would say 50,000, 60,000, 100,000 users into the next 1 million, 2 million users. That's certainly going to be the major challenge. But I think because we will at that point have a lot of these mechanisms in place, a lot of these incentive mechanisms, as well as have a better handle on the user base, and be able to grow it well beyond cryptocurrency at that point.
And also other two things are, first of all, we are going to do partnerships with many other dApps in the ecosystem. So we are good friends with the Status guys in Singapore. So Status will be one of the apps that we are partnering with for in-platform messaging. We'll partner with Digix, maybe Uport as well. We'll try to get a partnership with Uport. Also some of the exchanges. And yeah, in the beginning, I think we'll be targeting some verticals, maybe like developers to begin with, or the research community to do their peer reviews or all these things. So yeah, so that's one of our strategies.
Awesome. I like that. I think that there's a lot of projects that at least I have seen that kind of take that strategy of saying, like, we're going to build a niche audience from within the cryptocurrency community itself. It's almost like the cryptocurrency community is a test bed for many different tech verticals in blockchain, and are likely to adopt certain kinds of apps that come out of our space, just because these are the tools of the space that they regularly operate in. I think definitely building partnerships and integrations with other applications tends to help projects very much. I think in general, social media is it's a really tough vertical, but that's also what we've said in early 2016, and then kind of 8 different blockchain social media apps came along, including Steemit. And the one thing that I think Steemit has been one of my favorite projects, because it has demonstrated that in fact there is a really easy way to break the network effect of Facebook, and that is merely to pay the customer acquisition cost in actual dollars, that is higher than what those users value their Facebook experience at. And I think like Steemit solved that like really well. It demonstrated it could build several 100,000 account mainstream audience, right, with a very much more equitable breakdown between genders. There's almost like 50-50 men and women on Steemit, as opposed to the rest of blockchain, which is like 96.5% male. Right. So I think that's a really compelling
interesting thing. So I mean, when we first started talking about this idea, even before we ever started really going out and looking deeply into it, I would explain it like to my wife, for example, and we'd say, oh, data privacy, this, that, and she'd say, what? I don't quite get it. And I'd say, well, you know what? You earn for posting this information. She's like, oh, actually, I know a lot of people who would be into doing that.
So that makes a lot of sense. And my last thought though on Steemit was that I think one thing that someone needs to solve still though is retention, right? So acquisition has been demonstrated to some extent, and I think we can go like much further with it, by mainstream advertising and marketing these systems, which no one has really done yet. What hasn't been solved is as effectively, I think, is retention. And what you see in the Steemit economics is that the number of active users on Steemit is kind of proportional to price, because when price goes up, then everybody's incentivized to post and get the curation rewards and everything else, so activity goes up, and then vice versa. But what we really want to see is, like, how do we turn that kind of crypto economic system into a system that's just like monotonically like growing and retaining users all the time. Yeah, so I think that's going to be the challenge of every.
We have some marketing tricks up our sleeve to help make that happen. I'd probably won't disclose at this point, but
okay.
We both signed up where we use Steemit, so we're aware of how it works and kind of some of the things that it lacks doing marketing wise. So I think we can improve on that.
Also, I think if you look at other projects, other social networks. Sorry, I'm getting a feedback. Is it from David's side or?
I'll mute my mic.
Yeah. So yeah, if you look at other social networks, the retention is due to the utility. And I would say that we have certain phases or certain cycles when we use those platforms. So in case of LinkedIn, people use it when they are looking for a new job, or they want to post something related to their professional profiles. I don't use LinkedIn every day, but when I was looking for new jobs or getting new customers, I start going on LinkedIn every day, looking at my profile, updating my profile, posting more and more there. Similar with Facebook, you're there every day because your friends are there, they're posting new photos. And other social networks are coming along like Instagram. You post anything and everything there in the form of photos. So I think every platform has its own utility and its own reasons for retention of users. Yeah, on Twitter, I get to read all the latest activities, all the latest happenings in the world. Sometimes I don't even go and check on Google. I check on Twitter. If there is a new new event coming along or new something happening in the world, I just go on Twitter. And that's because Twitter people like Twitterati are active on this. So we need to find that particular hook for Indorse for them to keep coming. And I think one of them might be same thing, like posting jobs, or if you want to get a freelance job, you will have to up your profile, up your reputation. And so just before getting a job or posting a request on Ithlance or Freelancer, people might come on Indorse and start posting more claims. Yeah, other things might follow in a same manner, I think. What do you think, David?
Yeah, so there's a number of ways you can get people to become more active. Obviously, the easiest way is to just remind them that you exist on a regular basis, which is one of those things which I think some of the other platforms don't do very well. Yeah, the other one is to let them know what other people in their network are doing. And I think the endorsement mechanism as well reminds them of the fact that they could be earning on the platform. So when you're asked to endorse, you're getting a message about that. And then now you know that you have an opportunity to earn something from doing that activity. So I think it has a lot of built-in mechanisms to bring people back onto the platform. And on top of that, we can then have them doing additional claims, additional proofs within the platform to generate more content, essentially. One of the unique things about professional networks in general, though, is the value of the member, or the value of that the member generates by posting this information. If you look at actually what Facebook earns per user versus what something like a LinkedIn earns per user, I don't know if you've ever tried to advertise on LinkedIn. It's extremely expensive to advertise there. And the reason for that is because people are posting so much information that's of value. And again, they're not really getting, most people don't get the fact that they're doing this. So we think that by rewarding people for doing this, and by having them more active at doing this, ultimately it's going to generate more value for the user or for the member of the platform.
Nice. So when you guys talk about machine learning, or when you talk about like regular updates by email and things like that, those sound like components of a centralized system. So can you talk a little bit about like what's the decentralized part here, what's the centralized part, and how does that break down?
Yeah, that's actually a good question. So in this case, as I said, when you post a claim and you get a request for endorsement, you will get a notification, or you will get some sort of reminder for that. So see, obviously, I want to make it as decentralized as possible. But for the sake of efficiency and making this work, some of those things will be done through server and client server architecture. So when I started building Indorse, my aim was to have a serverless dApp, like just a React application which directly speaks with the blockchain. But as I went developing it, I realized that I also need a node server for that. It might not store all the data, it might not do all the things on the platform, but I need some server, because if you look at other platforms, other similar dApps like Lunar or Steemit, they also have their own blockchains or their own layers above blockchains. And when I spoke about Raiden or all these networks above the blockchain, frankly, in a payment channel, you're storing your messages somewhere and then replaying them again. So there needs to be some component of centralization there. I think it will change in a few years, but to begin with, we'll need to have that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that architecture makes sense, right? Like, because the alternative would be that you would need to distribute, I don't know, like machine learning processes or marketing processes across decentralized nodes, and that doesn't necessarily make sense. It shouldn't necessarily be the job of user nodes, right? So it makes sense that you guys have some kind of participant on the network, and then that that node or process does these things on behalf of the network, and makes it better. The downside of that is that any in that architecture, like any third party can come in and try to do the same job that you guys are doing, and it sort of doesn't matter if you started the network or not. There's nothing proprietary around it, and that's the trick of decentralized networks, I think. Very cool. So we have just another like 10 or 15 minutes or so, but I'd love to get to the point, to the part about your token sale, and talk to us a little bit about the token or tokens that you're thinking about building in this system. What do they do, and what is going out as the token sale asset, and how does that work?
So the token event is going to happen on August 8th. It's going to be for the IND token, which is the utility token to purchase services on the platform. So ultimately what will happen is, once this token is issued, advertisers and other people who wish to buy services on the platform will need to use this token. It flows back into the platform, into a pool, which then gets redistributed among the users who have created the content, or among the members who are participating in the platform, either by creating content or by endorsing the claims of the other users. So that's going to happen on August 8th. We'll soon be taking some pre-sale commitments prior to that. So in either case, join up on our Slack channel, and you can learn more about that.
Sorry, I put myself on mute. I'm sorry, how much were you looking to raise? Oh, you're muted, David.
Oh, sorry about that. So the cap is 50,000 Ether.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be the hard cap. The soft cap, I believe, is
30,000.
30,000.
Yeah, so actually,
that's kind of our goal. Yeah, our goal is 30,000, but the hard cap is 50,000.
Actually, what happened is 2 or 3 weeks ago, when Ether was about $300, we wanted to raise like around $15 million. So we thought about that cap. So it again depends, but yeah, I'm frankly not concerned with the price, but about what we need to build the project. And also, what we are doing is, we are not issuing all the tokens at once. We'll be doing a secondary token sale after a couple of years. So this token sale is mainly geared towards product development and then getting the initial users. So after that, when we want to scale up, I'll be doing a second token sale as well. So we want to be responsible with it. We don't want to do an uncapped token sale and just take more money than we need.
Yeah, we're also, I mean, we come from a business background where you raise enough to build your product and test it and get initial users on, and then when you've proven that there's traction, that's when you go out and you raise the next round. So that's a plan with what we're doing. We have the roadmap set out, and then about a year and a half, 2 years out, we'll be able to release that second set of funds for purchases, or the second set of tokens for purchases, to help bring it out to the next larger mass of users.
Mm-hmm. So this is like my favorite part of the program, because this is one of the central issues that we study at CoinFund, namely token sales, their structure, and their markets, right? And so you guys are currently in a market that is that continues to be very frothy. You have companies raising like over $100 million sales, often against fairly little product. And in that context, sort of like VC or more traditionally minded investors, let's say, tend to look at it and say, this is an irresponsible situation. Startups shouldn't be raising that much. They should go slowly and ramp up, and etc. And I totally like see that point of view. And then the other point of view is like, if you can show that that the teams actually do have good incentives and good intentions and are actually working toward building great products, then the fact that they can raise more is sort of a competitive advantage relative even to traditional technology markets startups. So that's an interesting thing to think about, where like someone who raises $30 million can pivot 30 times, whereas the traditional market startup can only do it twice or something like that. So that's interesting. And the other interesting thing is, like, many people last year, they would just kind of sell 80%, keep 20% for themselves. But for many kinds of businesses, that's a disadvantage, right? Certain verticals or certain products really benefit from the ability of having multiple rounds along the way, along the different points of their growth. And what you guys are saying with your secondary round has been echoed in many different projects this year, where people have recognized that and said, hey, maybe we should be allocating like a Series A and a Series B and a Series C, like in the the token allocation itself. So do you guys, like, with respect to the rounds, are you guys thinking that there's just going to be two, or is there even room for more potentially down the road?
I'll take myself off mute. Yeah, we definitely see a secondary round happening about 2 years from now. And depending on the valuation of the tokens at the time, we could use a balance of that to have a third round perhaps later on in order to continue to expand.
Mm-hmm. And do you, so normally in that situation, you kind of have to create that allocation now, but you don't know what the valuation is going to be down the road. So one of the challenges is, like, well, if I make that allocation too big, then I'll have this like $100 million round to raise, and I don't necessarily want to under-raise that. So how are you guys thinking about that?
Yeah, so we're working with Wings.ai as well to help do some of those predictions.
Mm-hmm.
And also we are working with Smith & Crown on the crypto economic design. Those guys have been really helpful. We have regular calls with them. So yeah, we are trying to figure it out. That's actually a really challenging question. What is the allocation now? What is the allocation later? And it's not very easy to answer it. So we are taking our time to do that.
Mm-hmm. And then what kind of we call it the public float. In other words, what percentage of the supply are you guys selling at the public first round token sale?
Yeah, so it depends. So yeah, we are doing the Wings DAO prediction from 17 July to 23rd July, and that would give us a better answer for that. We haven't fixed the percentages right now.
Do you think it would be like a minority allocation, like something like 10 to 30%, or do you think it would be like a majority allocation where it would be more like?
I think it would be a minority between between 15 to 30% or even 35%.
Yeah,
okay, gotcha.
We're estimating somewhere between, I'd say, 25 to 35% for the initial token sale.
Got it. So about a valuation about like 30 to 40 million at sale.
Yeah, the valuation thing is again another crazy thing. I see it now. Yeah, some projects are being valued at 1 billion now. I'm like, what?
I mean, yeah, but for comparative analysis, I think it's still quite useful. Okay, so one more question for you guys, which is, oh my God, I had a question and then I disappeared. So we're talking about the sale and. Talk about your valuation, and then, oh yeah, so I guess like how big is your team today, right? And of that 10 million, like that sounds like you're anticipating that to be a 2-year runway for what could be a potentially large team here.
Yeah, so we are continually hiring. So right now we have 3 of us here in Singapore, including Goreng when he's here. He's in London right now. We need him back here actually as soon as he can get here. But yeah. So we have 3 guys here in Singapore, another developer in India, as well as a marketing guy, our CMO in India, and 2 more developers out of Germany. Goreng, have you hired anyone else on in the past week? Because I know we're looking for more people.
I think I might be hiring one more guy tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah, he's in Germany as well.
So it sounds like a fairly, like a larger, fairly distributed team.
Yeah, I see. Frankly, like getting developers, blockchain developers in Singapore is quite difficult. It's not so easy. And the good developers already have their own ICOs or their own startups. I don't know.
Understood. And
okay, it's similar to like finding a great co-founder like Goreng. You have to convince them that your idea is so much better than what their idea is.
Yeah. They're like, but I'm building a social network. Great. So last question.
But actually, we are getting a lot of inquiries. I just did a meetup last night in Vietnam. I happen to have been there, so I did the Saigon Bitcoin meetup, which is a great community. And immediately after, a couple of people came over and said, "Are you guys looking? We're developers. I know a bit about blockchain." So it's getting really interesting now. You have a lot more people coming into the industry and looking for things like ours that are cool to do.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So last question for me, for you guys is, you obviously you have a centralized company. What is the business model of that company? Is it holding the tokens of the network? Is it somehow generating revenue through services, or like how do you see the company making money in a return for its investors?
So for the company itself, when that pool comes in from the advertisers, we take a percentage of that as administration for the platform, which we then of course have to go out and sell it on an exchange, just like the members of the platform who are earning it do. So ultimately, the members who are active, who are generating content, who are doing work on the platform, are earning revenue via advertising and other services which are being purchased on the platform itself. So the people who purchase that token at the initial token offering or at the token event on August 8th, they're going to be selling these to people in the future who are interested in advertising on the platform and using our services.
And one of the other rare things that we have is an actual business plan, because our COO, operations guy, Dipesh, he used to work at PwC as an accountant, and he keeps hounding me for, hey, Gaurang, we need this, we need the numbers, we need the projections on these things. Yeah. So yeah, he has been thinking a lot about business models and projections and revenues.
Yeah, a lot of this comes from the fact that Gaurang and I have been working together on an actual business for a while now. So bringing in Dipesh as the COO has been a real boost as far as us, sitting down and actually cranking out numbers and financial projections and modeling. And yeah, I mean, we always look at go-to-market and sales and product, but I think also looking at revenues, what the ultimate value of these different components are going to be. That's definitely a skill that someone who used to work at PwC as a chartered accountant is really helpful with.
And I frankly, I personally hate Excel sheets. I love, I do my calculations in Python. I don't do it in Excel. It's much easier.
Nice. Awesome, guys. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to come on and telling us about Indorse and the details of your project. We look forward to following your progress, and good luck with your sale. And if there's anything, what should people watching? Where should they go? What should they know, ahead of the sale?
So for the safest place to go to indorse.io, indorse.io. Make sure that is always the address that you put in. Don't trust any other address that's posted. From there, you can join our Slack channel. You can check us out on Twitter. You can check us out on all the different media sources. Hopefully soon we'll also have indorse.io as one of those sources you can go to that'll be trusted. Yeah, so Slack is also very good. So join indorse.heroku.com. But the best thing to go to is to go to indorse.io.
Got it. All right. Thanks, guys. Thank you for joining, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah. Thank you, Jake.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks. Take care.